Hello, everybody. Sorry about the technical delay difficulty. For some reason, my camera wouldn't start, and when I tried to fix it, it it caused me to end the whole live stream. So now I'm back. Here is the live. Uh, this is going to be the dating special and the last Valentine's Day special that I think I'm going to do for the channel. I want this to be kind of the definitive end to this topic. I for a variety of reasons. Um, First, if you want to know some of my context previously, um, that I've done on previous what's it called videos about this. I did a video about generally social class and romantic relationships and the game theory behind it for last year's Valentine's Day special. And the second part of that was a one about should you date within your own class, and it's going to inform a lot of the context really for um, this video. Um, and so, but for this one, I'm just going to go more into the economic and structural breakdown of the modern dating market. I first am going to start with a lecture explaining what is going on here and just why I think this is the way it is and what the incentive structures are. And then I am going to afterwards take all of your questions and answers about this. And yeah, so that's I'm going to try to do like a data and fact-based analysis here. I'm not going to really try to cater to either manosphere or feminist rhetoric when I do this. And it's probably going to offend a lot of people because there are issues with both men and women have to deal with on this. But just from my own context, for my own situation on this, and I'm not going to say too much just out of the respect of privacy for those involved, but I am engaged to get married, and I'm getting married myself later this year. Um, and so I've went through a lot of the dating market of the 2010s and 2020s. So I have some lived experience with it, but it's not really about myself. But yeah, it's just out of privacy. I'm not going to go into my own relationship details, but I just have to, in order to acknowledge my biases on here. Now let's get on to the main subject matter of this. Um, the main fundamental problem, really, in terms of why the dating market is broken, is really just because of the fact that most people are more control seeking than in the past. And your typical person is a lower quality romantic partner than they were in the past. Um, Economic forces are mainly what is driving people apart, um, and is leading to more people trying to seek control seeking behavior. And I think this is going to continue because of the AI movement and how AI is going to play a role because AI can fill a lot of the roles that people want out of a romantic relationship without the required effort in return that is needed to maintain a romantic relationship. So basically, say prior to the 70s, um, like people mainly found their future husbands or wives through their community, and you had a more standardized uh, um, value set and more class stability and more defined gender expectations. Uh, like even if America was always a ethnically and religious diversity place, you had your own little community that generally had a shared ethos and shared values. And the main thing that has kind of disrupted that has been really the internet. Like before the internet, if you had some weird hobby, let's just say you're obsessed with Pokemon Gold version, and even though that game's now 20 years old plus years old, and your local community generally found you weird for it, um, and you wouldn't build your life around it. Whereas today, you could find a subreddit for Pokemon Gold version, and say, hey, look, there's 20,000 people who are just as fanatic about this than I am. And so therefore, I'm not really as weird as I perceive to be. And as a byproduct of that, I don't have to try to socialize with the people in my own community. I could just hold out and hope that I could bump into one of those 20,000 people on the subreddit who happens to be a an attractive romantic partner as well. And I know I'm using the Pokemon Gold version example to be facetious and a little bit humorous, but you guys got to get my general point. Um, and like the other thing, really, apart from the internet allowing people to hide in their little and cocoons, it has also provided a way to be more anonymous than in the past. Uh, you can live a functioning life post 2009 without really having to talk to people. You can do a lot of basic services for whether it's how you interact with the government, whether it's how you interact with businesses, whether it's buying consumer products or insurance or um, running your day-to-day errands all through the internet. You don't have to really talk to people or you directly. Um, and this also has really an impact on the fact that since people do not have to socialize, they will have less opportunities to run into people. Uh, and you just have this idea that like I moved to a town where I don't know anybody, so I don't have to worry about my reputation, and so therefore I don't have to behave as honorably as I would if people weren't watching me. I'm not saying that nobody has integrity. There are plenty of people who do, but in a bigger urban environment where the repercussions of like treating a bunch of people badly in romantic relationships or like say you stiff a bunch of people on first dates and just don't show up, nobody will ever know because you live in a city of millions of people and you're just one of many and you met this person on a dating app, so it won't come back to your real life social circle. And for however, if that does happen sometimes, you know what? You could always just move to another city that's just as big where nobody knows you and reset from scratch. So I think urban anonymity that plays a role in a lot of this. And the cultural fragmentation, just again, not everybody like when you say 50 years ago, the chances that the people in your community, your prospective romantic partners in whatever age group you want to date, were likely the same religion as you. They were likely had the similar general values as you. They had probably had similar taste in food. They probably had similar views on family. That's not, and it's similar culture. That's not a given today anymore. Um, you have people of several different cultural backgrounds, even if they grew up in the same cultural background, maybe because they've adopted different subcultures in high school through the internet or like you don't have what mass media did in the old days was homogenize the culture. The internet has done the opposite and has dehomogenized and made more people more niche. And anything that's a niche taste will be way more liked by those who like the niche taste. But you have a niche taste has a smaller market. Like, so like that's kind of the downside really. And it makes it harder for people to pair. But that's kind of the first point. You basically have infinite choice. There's no enforcement for bad behavior, and there's really no like institutions or like social pressures that kind of stabilize things. The next stage really is there's a decline in partner quality and the traits that both genders actually want, not what they say they want. Like if you do polls on what men and women say they want in dating, it's generally the same things. Um, you'll have them say, "Oh, I want somebody who has, um, like, who's a nice person, who is good looking and has good values and has a stable career." But the thing is that in practice, what men and women actually want is quite different. And so the traits um, that men want in women, modern women are not doing as well as maybe in the past, and the traits that women want in men are not doing as well as in the past. Even if overall they might be doing better in different things, those things just quite frankly don't matter, or at least they don't matter as much as they do if some enough for a romantic commitment. Um, so let's do an example. Let's start with men. Um, the main reason why men are perceived to be weaker romantic partners today than in the past is they have a general decline in the ability to provide. They have a decline in personal discipline, and they have a decline in longer term planning. Uh, and there's a lot of reasons why. One, you've had relative economic stagnation. Median wages, particularly for those in the bottom 70% of income earners, is pretty much flat since the 1980s. Um, there's also a negative education gap. Only 42% of bachelor degrees now are given to men versus 58% to women. And that number has been widening consistently. So that has made men relative, and they also have significantly higher dropout rates out of school than women do. And education is not just like something that, oh, I'm being a snob. I have to have a man with more education than me. There's a reason why women value men with education is because education is proof that you can commit to doing something with deferred gratification for a 3 to 4 year period. And that's a sign of longer term success and personal discipline. Also, educated men tend to be higher incomes on average, not always, especially in the way that um, college has kind of become a little bit more saturated today, but it's still generally the case. And then on top of that, education rates also just maybe signal a certain level of social class or cultural sophistication that, and a lot of women don't really want to marry somebody in a class below them. I mean, generally, most people don't at all. But like, and then the other thing that is going on is you have a labor force retreat. Like the labor force participation rate for men under 55 is at close to a 70-year low. And so that is a problem. It doesn't show up necessarily the unemployment rate with the way that it's calculated, but it is a problem that you see. It's like the whole NEET phenomenon, which is not in education, employment, or training, and NEET rates have risen in a consistent pace basically since 2000, and that has accelerated really since 2008. And then there is a problem really with substance abuse for men. Like they are more likely um, to use certain recently legalized things that um, are known to kill your ambition. The rates of it has gone up by 5x really over the last 20 years or so, and that's really accelerated since 2015 when it's become legalized. And even more harder substances have gone up by 3x since 1990. And if you're on that kind of stuff, it's going to be bad for your health, it is going to make you less desirable to date because nobody really wants that who's got a good head on their shoulders. And third, it kills a lot of your motivation to do things. And so you're less likely to progress in your career or your personal goals or anything. And lack of motivation and lack of actual accomplishment, especially once you surpass like the age of 30, becomes an increasingly liability in the dating market for men. Um, and then the other one is gaming, a certain video games particularly. Um, this is one that, as somebody who does like video games himself to a certain degree, but plays a lot less than I used to, I didn't really realize how much video games are a turnoff to a lot of younger women. Uh, it's like the number one kind of hobby that is not like completely destructive to your health, that is the most negatively rated by women in the, and men 18 to 34 game about an average 3 hours a day, whereas like NEETs and unemployed men game on average 6 hours a day. And if you're only really awake for 16 hours a day, that's almost half of your day that you're spending playing video games, which is a problem. I think my view on video games, and I've said this in my video, I think it is a low class signal to a certain degree if you, especially in excess. But I think if you complete every other thing that you've done that you're supposed to do for the day, whether it's your work, your chores, your longer term projects, your socializing, and you have like an extra hour before going to bed to play video games, it's not the end of the world. I mean, I think that some women can be right unfair about men's video game habits. I think it's a lot better than other things that happen late at night. But if it dominates your entire life and it's your primary hobby and you do it in the to the detriment of like more pro-social goals, then it becomes a problem. And I think we have crossed that tipping point to a certain point. Like I know I wasted a lot of my teen years due to excess video games in my life, and I kind of snapped out of it in college, but a lot of people don't. And it's also why you're seeing a problem in the dating market. The other one is gambling and sports betting and crypto um, addiction, in the sense of like day trading. Crypto has sharply risen among men under 35. Like sports betting participation has more than doubled since 2018. Um, and like people blowing up their financial um, nest eggs due to bad crypto trades has exploded really as a problem as well. And like that, and that's also kind of created more perceived financial instability or perceived financial irresponsibility. And financial irresponsibility again is another severe turnoff for why a lot of women don't want to date younger men. There's also just a general social issue with testosterone declining by about 25% since the 80s, but that might be more of a that's not might not be a cause and effect thing. That might just be correlated because a lot of these other behaviors kind of demotivate people, and less motivated men are likely to probably have lower testosterone to a certain degree. I don't know the correlation or causation, but it does probably play a role as well. But in general, the bottom line really is that the traits that women really want in a husband are ambition, mental stability, the willingness to take care of a family, leadership, like not just always deferring to her for major life plan decisions, and being able to like have a plan and tell her this is what we're going to do. And like people like that, and emotional self-regulation are all down. And then there's the economic problem too, but I think it's more these personality traits that lead to the economic problem. So that is why a lot of men are perceived to have lower dating value for women than they did say 30 years ago. Now we got to go to the other side of the coin. And when it comes to women and the traits that a lot of men value in women they want to marry, that's the key word. I'm not talking about short-term stuff. I'm talking about people like marriage-seeking men. They value modesty, loyalty, and long-term orientation, which is again, like this is the one thing I think that is similar for, and it's also kind of a problem just with prole drift in general, which is the idea that you can tell what's prole drift based on what is more short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And the decline in long-term thinking, which I'm going to talk about in a different video, it actually is the topic of my speech that I did last night as part of the tour in Newport. It's That's a substantial problem. And both, I guess, men and women who are marriage minded and long term minded. If you are marriage minded, you're more likely to be long term minded. Uh, want a relationship that somebody can be long term, because if they do things for the short term that focused, it's going to likely be at the expense of their long term stability of their marriage. So, like example would be like I would say like the norms have shifted for the number of romantic partners. Like the percentage of women who had 10 or more partners before marriage was 5% or less in 1990. It's probably closer to 20 to 25% now. Those with more than five was less than 10% in 1990, and it's probably closer to 35 to 40% now. And a lot of men just really don't like that, because there's a lot of research to show that leads to higher rates of infidelity and divorce. And even if they don't know that statistic. It's just kind of a gut feeling around that kind of thing. Another one is like tattoos. Um, with among women under 30, tattoos have gone up from like under 10% in the late 80s and early 90s to about 40% or more. I've seen data as high as maybe 44% of women under 35 have at least one tattoo. And that's also a turnoff to a lot of marriage-minded men. The other thing would really be is binge drinking and like increased party culture. Like the rate of binge drinking among young women has doubled in the last 30 years, and the number of hospital visits because of binge drinking has increased by more than 50%. There's also a decline in religiosity. Like the percentage of women who no longer affiliate with a traditional religion has gone up from less than 10% to over 30% over that kind of period. And there's also just a general drop in the desire to have a family. Only about recent surveys show only about 35 to 40% of women under 30 say that marriage is important. And that you see like these surveys that show the rank of the priority of having kids for young women, and it's at the bottom below education, career, travel, and a variety of other things where it used to be like a top priority for women. And a lot of reason why men want to get married is to have a family, because it doesn't make any economic or rational sense for a man to get married if he's not having children. And so that's one kind of counterpoint here. And then 1 in 3 women now who are Gen Z say they never want to have children. And so if you never want to have children, and most men who want to get married because they want to have children, that's going to lead to lower rates of marriage, obviously. And then there's higher SSRI use. SSRI use has doubled since 2010, and that has shown some issues with pair bonding and romantic stability. So overall, these traits show that like the traits that men want in a future wife, like emotional stability, modesty, like religious faith, loyalty, family orientation, are just a lot lower than they used to be. So as I pointed out, men have weakened in quality because they're just less motivated and less ambitious, and women have gone down in quality because of certain traits that men value, mainly indicators of loyalty and trust and family orientation, have gone down. So they've both equally declined in quality. And this is when I have a problem with the modern dating discussions, is that it heavily skews just blaming one gender or the other, and that doesn't really get anywhere. It just creates resentment without actually trying to solve the problems. Um, and so the next thing really is stage for this, because that's not the only thing, is social media. Social media is creating this perception of extreme levels of competition and relatively unrealistic dating standards. In general, young women get at least 10 times more attention on social media than young men of similar age and educational background. Um, and when men feel like that any girl that is on Instagram is getting DM'd by the best looking or richest guy in town, it demotivates him to try. Whether that's accurate or not, that's a whole different discussion, but the perception of it is what motivates behavior. And the perception is that dating has become a winner take all system where either like the top 1% of men get pretty much all of the women and rotate through them, and everybody else is left behind. Um, there is some data shows that online dating is Pareto distributed, where basically the top 20% of men get almost all of the matches on dating apps. And if you're in the bottom half, you're getting basically nothing. And you can tell basically is if you're a young guy, if you want to guess whether you're the top 20% of looks or not, just if you get more than one match a week on a dating app, you're in the top 20% of looks. That's probably like a shortcut, a proxy to see where you stand. And if you're in the top like 5 to 1%, you're getting multiple a day. It's very skewed that way. And so the dating, and because a lot of more conventional ways that people used to meet each other, such as like third spaces, are becoming less popular. Social circles have narrowed because people are just less social and more introverted. And like older school ways of meeting people you didn't know, like cold approach, has become a little bit more stigmatized socially. It's harder for young men to even meet people in real life than in the past. Um, the internet again has disintermediated, and like because of how skewed dating apps are, and how people believe that because there's a random community on Reddit that agrees with you on everything, that there should be one of those at least in your town. People will put these very high expectations or these very weird niche things on their online dating profiles, and if nobody and then they don't find matches, or they don't find somebody who fits that exact thing, they're like they'll just hold out. And it's that, and it goes back to what I said before about the internet disintermediating the culture and creating a lot of competing different value systems. Um, the other thing really is gender politics. You have this idea that basically that the political game should be used to redistribute wealth from one gender to the other, or vice versa, or redistribute cultural power from one gender to the other. And it naturally tends to put people who are paying attention a lot to politics on the opposite sides of the political aisle. And um, they're just the general shift on people willing to date people outside their political party has declined a lot over the last 10 years. I think it has to do with also the nature of the difference between what a Democrat and a Republican is now versus 20 years ago. It used to be a lot of like minor disagreements on taxes and foreign policy. Now it's like a value set, because I think that politics has become a substitute for religion for a lot of secular people. And since your political values are taken as seriously as previous generations took their religious faith, it makes sense not to date somebody with a different political platform than you. And so, as a result, with gender polarization in politics, it doesn't make sense for people to date somebody with complete opposite values of you, whether politically or religiously or culturally. And so, that is another kind of division, is this whole gender politics, and have women overwhelmingly moving to the left and men more drifting to the right. Um, and basically, the other thing is the general instability that all this creates makes deep romantic investment irrational. Like, because ghosting is fairly normalized and people will break up over relatively trivial things, they call this the ick generally. And the existence of no fault divorce. You have a lot of people who are very hesitant to stay loyal in a romantic relationship, because why invest a lot of time and money and emotional capital in something that can end overnight because of something that you cannot control? And so, because of this fear, people are less willing to invest emotionally into relationships. And because people are willing to invest less in relationships, it makes it more likely for people to not stick together when they face adversity. And they're likely to not persist when there's a minor disagreement, or there's even like major life challenges, because like part of dedicating your life to somebody is going through with them with tough life challenges on both sides. Like, say for example, you're a young guy who loses his job, and like you if you always are going to leave, people lose their jobs a lot in the turn of the economy, even if they're very smart and capable people, or their income goes down to start a business. And if somebody leaves you because of that, then how can you really expect to put effort and to commit if you know that as soon as times go south, they're going to be out? Or the opposite, say like if like you're somebody who has like an emotional problem going on in their life due to something happening, and you just think it's too much drama to deal with and you walk away, like it makes it quicker for that. And it goes back to the game theory that I did on the video that I talked about, social class and dating, is that um, in this kind of instability prioritize control seekers, because they're like, look, if I know that I can't really count on somebody to stick around, I just want to extract as much out of the relationship I get before it breaks up. Basically, the game theory shows no incentive to put in effort and investment, and therefore, if you're not putting any effort or investment, people are not will want to in general, people, if you don't want to commit, and the relationship quality is lower, because the quality of relationship is generally correlated to how much effort you are willing to put into it. Like, the grass isn't always just greener on the other side, it's how much you water it. And it's not just with romantic relationships too, it's really just anything in life. Is generally anything worth getting is usually hard to do, and to get accomplish any challenging goal is somewhat correlated to how much effort you are willing to put in. Um, and then um, and so as a result, people feel like being insecure is rational because they know that this is going on. Um, and then the other thing is you've seen a general decline in soft skills and emotional intelligence. I'm saying this as somebody who's not the highest EQ person on the face of the earth. And like, but the thing is that the general decline in soft skills and emotional intelligence made me from probably being at the bottom of level of EQ to probably closer to average. Not maybe I've gotten a little better, but in general, I think the overall EQ of society is declining. And I think there's a few reasons. One, more people are interacting socially online or via text instead of phone calls or in person. And so as a result, you don't have to directly deal with emotional things. Like, even if you are talking to somebody via text, you can always just put the phone away for half an hour and come back to think about it. Um, the other thing is that in general, you're seeing a decline in patience and conflict resolution and communication and emotional regulation among men and women. I think it could have to do with helicopter parenting. It could do with people being locked down for a year plus due to the pandemic and therefore not interacting with people in their formative years as much as they should have, like in high school and college. Um, or just, again, using digital media to shield yourself from the ups and downs in society. That I might have some, but I don't really know the reasons on why, but I just know generally, just from my lived experience and the research I've done on this, is that there's a general decline in soft skills and EQ. And the last point before I get into the role of AI on this is just mental health and instability. Like, Gen Zers in general have a record level high of depression and anxiety. Loneliness is up about 60% to 80% for young men and women since 2010. And again, this identity fragmentation problem that I told you that's a byproduct of the internet. Like, if you're on the internet, you can be whoever you want and perfectly optimize your image. But when you go into the real world and people call you out for your inconsistencies, or you can't always show this perfect facade of what you want people to think yourself in real life, it creates cognitive dissonance and sometimes mental health issues. And also, the normalization of mental health diagnoses is making people maybe believe that they have some unsolvable mental health condition versus just a personality flaw that can be improved with dedicated emotional training or therapy or other things that help with that. And I think also a lot of the therapy speak stuff is a problem too. Like, people are trying to, the main consequence to this is people think their personalities are immutable, and anything that is not perfect about them cannot be improved. And so as a result, you just will say, hey, this is just who I am. And if I'm a bad person, you have to just appreciate it, or I don't treat people well because of X and X mental condition. Um, I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to try to improve my behavior. And I think it's a cop out to a certain degree. Um, and that unwillingness to adjust for that is a problem. And it's also, I think, is driving the looks maxing movement to a certain degree, because they think that the false assumption a lot of these young men make is that they might be right that it's harder for them to make more money than women at the same age, but they're wrong the main assumption they're extremely wrong about is that their personality is immutable. If they spent that time investing in money and energy into improving their human capital or their personalities through more interesting life experiences or putting themselves through various challenges or continued education, the ROI, not just for their dating life, but for everything else, would be much higher than some random extreme cosmetic surgery or other types of looks maxing elements. Um, so that kind of goes into the structural kind of causes. The other really thing that I'm going to go into is AI, because I think AI is going to possibly change this a lot. AI is going to gain a lot of traction for romance in general. And this is, people are going to say that this is silly, but when I go through the reasons for it, it's going to start to probably make a lot more sense from an economic perspective and a social perspective. One, AI companions provide zero maintenance drama. Um, AI is always emotionally available. It's never in a bad mood. It's never tired. It's never stressed out. It's never resentful. They don't have any emotional baggage. The AI won't ghost you, and its personality can adapt perfectly to your preferences. You never have to argue with the AI about things like chores, because one, the AIs that can't do any chores, but once you have AI integrated with a robot, the robot will always do something for you, no questions asked. Um, the AI can program to its personality to have slight changes so that you don't ever lose the spark from becoming too familiar. And they'll always validate you and they'll always be enthusiastic no matter what. The second thing, there's really no monogamy pressure with AI. Um, you could, the AI doesn't care if you're dating somebody in real life. The AI doesn't care if you have another AI companion. Like AIs don't get jealous because they're not people, and AIs don't really have to care about the real world consequences of infidelity because it's not a person, and it doesn't have any needs other than maybe electricity and the subscription payment. Um, and many people now date several AIs, quote unquote, simultaneously, even like integrate them into their own life. It's like it's completely on your terms. And you don't have to negotiate really anything. You can ask everything you want from the AI without ever having to give anything in return. And this leads to basically any sort of customizable intimacy. And you never have to worry also about AI telling other people what you say to it, unless I guess there may be privacy concerns like with the company, but like AI is not going to go and tell gossip with their brother or sister or or your in-laws or with their friends about what you talked about last night. Um, that is another really kind of component to this. Um, and um, a lot of the things that because of the social media and because of the ghosting and because of like a lot of the problems I've explained earlier, a lot of men and women feel like they have to like always be perfect and have a Herculean level of effort to maintain a relationship. And they think, oh, it's not worth it. I can just do the AI, get 80, maybe 80% of what I want with 2% of the effort. And I think it's both men and women. Like I hear it all the time. It's only men who are going to switch this, whereas I think it's probably going to be more even than people think because AIs can replace both needs fairly well. With men, AI can replace intimacy, especially when robots are developed for it. Robots can also replace domestic labor. I've already talked about on this channel, like mobile aloha and these humanoid robots that'll be able to do your laundry and cook your food and clean your house and all of that. That's coming. And a lot of men want in romantic partners or a wife is somebody who will help with the domestic side of things while they're busy working. And the other thing is an AI can offer constant gratification and validation and will never reject you because fear of rejection is something that men particularly hate. The other thing too is from a parenting perspective, um, if you want to raise kids in a particular set of values and you don't think, especially with political polarization among Gen Z men and women, you don't think you could find a romantic partner that has the same values as you could train the AI to be the other parent to help enforce the values you want. I don't really like the idea of having a two-parent household where one of the parents is a robot, but I think it's not outside of the realm of possibility. And then with women, a lot of women now have very high-paying jobs, so they don't need men for economic dependence anymore. Um, and the second thing is AI boyfriends can always give you the perfect amount of emotional validation. They give you space when you need it. They can give you all the attention when you need it, and they can do it in a way that is predictable and follows your emotional wavelength. And AIs are better at managing emotional labor. And if you have the LLM to handle all the emotional side appeal of being with a romantic partner, and you have the high paying job to give you all the financial benefits of being married to a man, then um, it could high paying job could be a functional substitute. I'm not saying these are better substitutes. They're inferior substitutes to romantic partners. But again, can I get 70 to 80% of what I want with 1 to 2% of the effort? Again, also in general, AI is no infidelity risk. It won't care if you slack off in a relationship. It won't care if you cheat because you can't really cheat on an AI because it's not really a person. They'll never disagree with you, and they and they can help you with parenting is a thing. And there's a lot of major social consequences to this. The marriage rate has declined by 60% in the last 50 years. We have record low birth rates in most Western countries. 25% of men and about 20% of women now over 40 are childless. And it's starting to reflect kind of similar dynamics demographically that Japan and Korea were the leaders in, and the West is um, catching up. And how does social class connect to it? Before I get into all your guys' questions, I'm going to kind of go into really because there's a big class element to this too. The one is the hollowing out of the middle class. Like the middle class historically is the most romantic social class because neither side had too much to lose or to gain from a financial perspective from dating one person or the other. Um, when you have more economic polarization, so like a bigger gap in wealth or social status on one partner versus the other, it makes it a little bit less stable, and it brings the control dynamics that I've talked about in previous videos. And so the hollowing out of the middle class makes it harder for people to pair. Second, really, is the prole drift and the cultural downshift. I've talked about prole drift in several videos, but the societal movement towards low status, impulsive, and short term behaviors, which I've mentioned before. Nobody really wants to marry somebody who has those behaviors if they have the choice otherwise. And so, I'd summarize this whole video to basically saying is nobody wants to marry a prole, because the traits that result in a successful and happy marriage are the exact opposite of the ones in society that cause prole drift. Um, and the other thing is you have the hypocrisy of a lot of the elites, which I've mentioned also before. A lot of elites promote very progressive norms when it comes to dating, like various alternative relationships. And whereas in practice, they have very traditional family formation, like those who are in the top 1% have lower divorce rates. They're more likely to get married and have kids and stay married and have more traditional dating habits, but at the same time they will vote for policies or publicly preach the opposite, and it confuses people. And then the other thing really is that you have people will not acknowledge the class incompatibilities, and so they have to signal them through other means. And that's the other way that class kind of plays a role in this. Um, and then the other thing is that you've seen as a byproduct of a more class bifurcated society is you have is the increased level of transactional extraction oriented dating versus true love, which we talked about in last year's video. Like most single people today don't want commitment. Like according to Pew Research, 63% of single adults are not seeking a committed relationship. And a similar study from Match in 2023 that 47% of daters actually prefer situationships. There could be a selection bias. The type of people who use dating apps are more likely to want like some amorphous definition of what their romantic relationship, but there's a general cultural trend for people not defining their relationships, which um, yeah, and I think it's kind of a reflection. People want less commitment. You've seen with women, they generally have become more preference for financial extraction. According to Lending Tree, 44% will not date a man with significant debt. I don't really blame them for that. That actually makes sense. And 30% require men who make more than 100K in income. Um, and then also you have women are twice as more likely to rate finances as a major factor for relationship viability. Um, Men generally prefer autonomy over commitment. Like 65% of men would rather have a casual dating than a serious relationship. And again, hobbies such as dating apps and video games and have an online um, other activities have made non-reciprocal relationship preferences more normalized. And in general, 52% of partners, male or female, expect a partner to improve their life, but only 28% feel obligated to do the same. And I think that really kind of is summarizes a lot of the problems. You've seen this with a San Diego State study showing sharp declines in agreeableness and conscientiousness among Gen Z. And as somebody who is fortunately in a relationship that is more aimed towards true love and prioritize companionship, this I this was a fear of mine when I was in the dating market. And the example of this are these some controversies like with people like the Akash Singhs of the world. And then you have um, the other thing is that you have more increased direct commercialization of relationships. Um, you see the rise of certain websites that I don't really need to name that you would know that have caused now about 4% of women 18 to 40 have tried to be a creator on this one at least once in their life, which is kind of crazy to think about. That's very high. Um, and you have, as a result of this, and just in general, more direct transactional relationships becoming more popular, it's demotivating men to want to get married. Um, and the thing is that you see that basically the main critique of why, according to Pew Research, why men don't want to get married is lack of loyalty and a perception of transactionality. Um, and I think a lot of this is heavily exaggerated on YouTube. Um, but um, I think that in social media, I don't think it's as bad as perceived for the public. But again, a lot of this stuff is driven more by perception than reality. The fact that all this stuff is in your face all the time on your Instagram feeds or on YouTube or on X or talked about like among jokes among friends, like the transactionality of relationships, makes people believe it's more common than it actually is. And the perception of that is what causes people to change their behaviors in ways that are less pro-social. Um, and also because of this, a lot of men view their relationships as increasingly high maintenance and low reciprocity. And then there's women who also feel like that if they can't get a relationship that they can put in a lot less effort and get a lot more out of it, that they're doing something wrong. And it has a bunch of systematic preference issues. Like you have decline in marriage, and because of decline in marriage, you have increased wealth inequality because marriage is what helps middle class people build wealth, especially if they don't divorce. Loneliness, addiction, and nihilism are generally surge. Communities disintegrate. Like if you don't have a family and you're not settled somewhere, you're less likely to care about your community. Gender resentment hardens, and you have declining birth rates. So overall, a lot of this dating market issue is more due to economic decline, particularly among young men, and a lot of the sociocultural um, after effects of that, creating more transactional relationships, more prole drift, more class fragmentation, um, more men not really being able to provide like the traits that women want, and less women being able to provide the traits that men want. And that is kind of the the issue. I think the biggest problem I think could actually be fixed the quickest, which is probably the decline in men willing to lead their relationships. Like in general, fewer men want to take the lead in their relationships. This is like the opposite problem of men complaining about women being transactional. A lot of women are complaining about men just being too passive. Like men under 30 are the least likely male cohort to prioritize being a provider or protector. Um, Only 25% of men think that men should take the lead in a relationship or courtship. That's a drop from 50% among Gen X men at the same age. Um, like in 1990, 70% of people thought it was better for a man to take a lead in a relationship versus 32% today of young men. Um, and only 30% of men, according to Match and San Diego State surveys, I think, that show that only want to show only 30% of them I want to guide or direct the relationship. And they would and most prefer they would either have shared or have the woman take the lead in life decision making. And um, yeah, women generally want men with emotional leadership, not just paying bills, especially in an age when you can get a good paying job and not have to have a man do that. And that includes like things like initiating plans, like deciding where you're going to go out to dinner, um, decisiveness. Like when you have a tough choice that you got to make, you got to have a be decisive and stick to it. Conflict mediation, keeping promises, like saying you're going to do something and then actually doing it, which is usually a trait that is very valued among men. But it seems like a lot of men are not willing to, first of all, throw themselves out there and say they're going to do something. And then once they do say so, they're going to do something, stick to it. Um, and boundary maintenance too. It's usually that's the men's job in a relationship as well. If you just leave a vacuum and these kind of things, it leads to more emotional dissatisfaction and higher breakup rates. Um, I think there's why are men opting out of leadership? Well, there's a few reasons. One, you have issues with the Me Too movement, I think, and the perception of being controlling or problematic. Um, you have the economic stagnation. Like if you are making less money than your romantic partner as a man, it's harder to justify having leadership to a certain degree. And then also digital escapism, like you can go into digital environments where you can do what you want with no questions asked on the AI thing too. And so you don't have to have the pressure of making hard decisions because you can just delay it by just not making the decision and just kind of digitally numb yourself. So yeah, the main impact of why this shows that like a lot of women don't like men who are not decisive. The top complaint for women in relationships apparently is men lack direction and initiative. So I think if we want to have some way to fix this, I think men just having direction and initiative and doing whatever they want, whether women want to come on board or not, I think it will lead to a healthier society. It may fix some of this stuff on the micro level. I had a lot there. This was a really long, um, but now I am going to go into Q&A. And so feel free to ask questions. If you want to make sure that your question gets asked, because I know there's a lot of you on here and there's a lot going on with this live stream, um, feel free to do a super chat to make sure that I answer your question, because there's usually a lot of great questions and I can't get them all. And while I'm and fill in your questions now, because I'm going to announce some just general news for the channel. One, we're getting close to 100,000 subscribers. I'm really excited about that. We'll probably do a special $100,000, not 100,000, 100,000 subscriber um, live stream special where I kind of break down all the books on the shelf here. I've added several new ones, and I think it would be really interesting. And I also might do some other thing for 100K subscribers. If you have any ideas of ways to celebrate, let me know. Um, it will probably not be for at least a couple weeks because I'm heading off to Australia in a couple days, and we'll probably break that threshold while I'm down under. And we're gonna have two meetups while I'm in Australia. We got one in the Gold Coast this Saturday, and then we have one in Sydney on February 13th. We're also going to have a private dinner on the 13th. We only have 2 spots left if you want to be part of our Sydney private dinner. We're doing a bunch of curated experiences with groups of about 8 to 10 people where we have more private discussions as the meetups have grown a lot bigger about really whatever topics you like to talk about. And if you want to apply to join us at a private dinner or curated experience, here's the link. And we're also going to be doing several new tour stops across the United States. First, we're going to Scottsdale, Arizona on February 21st. And then I am going to Tampa and Palm Beach, Florida on the 26th and the 28th of February. And then after I get back from Florida, I will be having a meetup in Seattle on March 7th. And then I will be going to Northern California with meetups in Fresno, California on March 26th and San Francisco, California on March 28th. We're also going to be having a private dinner in Montecito, California ahead of my speech. I'm doing a private speaking event for the students at my alma mater, UC Santa Barbara, on the 30th of March. Then I will be going to the East Coast, starting with Toronto on April 9th, Boston on April 11th, and then New York City on April 14th. And then we are going to Atlanta. It's going to April 23rd. So like I know a lot of you guys have been begging me to come to Atlanta. And so I've confirmed Atlanta now for April 23rd. And then Chicago on the 25th of April. And then our last 2 stops for the first half of the year are going to be Dallas on the 30th of April. And then I am going to do last but not least Kansas City on the 3rd of May. So those are all the events that we're doing so far. And I'm probably going to do other cities starting in August. But I have things I need to do in the middle of the year that prevent me from traveling. So when I'm back to the tour, you want to vote on what cities I go to next. Feel free to vote via this form here. Yeah, I'm excited to see you guys all in person on the tour. And then for those of you guys in Europe and Latin America, those will be 2027. First, let's go through the super chats. Congrats on your engagement to be married. Please consider a prenup and protect yourself and your new wife. Marriage is awesome. Thanks. I'm really looking forward to getting married. Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for the support. And I think you've asked me about Atlanta. So yeah, we got the date finally lined up on the 23rd. Speaking of the books behind you, I picked up Fooled by Randomness. Really good so far. Recommend anyone watching. Thanks for the stream. Yeah, I've read Fooled by Randomness and Black Swan and Anti-Fragile, all the Taleb trilogy, and Dynamic Hedging, actually. They're all good reads. And Rita, thank you for the super chat. And thanks again for coming to the Newport meetup. It was a really good one. And I'll probably try to do another one in Orange County, end of summer or early fall. Yeah. And then let's see. Let's go with questions. How old am I? I'm in my mid-30s. So yeah, that's my age. Or maybe closer to late 30s now, but still. Let's see. Next questions. I'm going to start scrolling through. Come to Pittsburgh. I don't really have big enough of an audience in Pittsburgh. Like, if enough people vote there, I'll consider it. I've never been there. I've never been to Atlanta or Tampa either, so these will be my first times for both of those cities. On average, how many hours of uninterrupted sleep do you get? Um, I mean, I've gotten a lot better at that in recent years. If I had to guess, about 6.5 to 7.5. Like, I try to sleep in more, but I naturally just wake up at about that point. But it's usually about 7.5. Um, let's see. I thought progressivism had eliminated gender roles in the West. Well, I think that's what people think has happened, and it's what politically sounds right, but I don't think that's actually true in reality, particularly in the United States. Um, it might be true in Northern European countries. Let's see. Um, let's see. I'm trying to scroll up and see if what other questions I've got here. Anybody else here hate adultery? Yeah. I mean, adultery is unconscionable. There's a reason why it's one of the 10 commandments is to avoid doing it. Um, let's see. I'm trying to, there's a lot of comments here. So if it's up earlier in this thread, I'm probably not going to catch your question. So either re ask it, please, because yeah, there's a lot more. Um, yeah. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Akash Singh? I think he's a cautionary tale, honestly. And I feel bad for him because, like, I don't, unless if this is a giant act that he did to get attention, it's really kind of a sad situation. Favorite YouTube channels? I did a whole video about this, a previous live stream where I went through all of the top other YouTube channels I watch. So that would be a whole nother live. So I can't really repeat that here. What historical finance books do you recommend? Just finished 1929. I recommend if you want to check out, I have a whole book list where I did my top 100 books about finance, economics, social class, etc. And you could get it for free in the welcome email for joining my free Substack. Um, it will have all of them just in there. Like, I've asked this question so many times that I just decided to put it all in a book list because it's hard for me to remember all the books off the top of my head. Have you ever read Outwitting the Devil? Yeah, it's a great book, actually. I think it's better than Napoleon Hill's other ones, to be quite honest. Um, let's see. Thoughts on gold and silver doing a massive pullback. I'm not going to, just as a disclaimer, nothing on this live stream is investment advice. So um, please do your own research, or if you need to talk to somebody to help with your investments or you have specific investment questions, feel free to contact me directly through a consultation. As a disclaimer, I run a wealth management firm. That's like my real profession. I just do YouTube as kind of my side hobby in a way, but I'm not going to go into specific investments. But I think the pullback, though, has to do with the selection of Kevin Warsh, who is not as dovish as hoped by the precious metals markets. He has been a very public critic of expanding the Fed balance sheet, and was a big hawk and quit the Fed partially during the Obama administration because he was in the opposition to quantitative easing. And so that is why I think that the gold and silver markets have reacted as harshly to his appointment as they did, because it kind of it's a possible signal. I mean, it's too early to say. He might just do whatever the president wants, but it's an early possible signal that the Fed is not going to just let things run super hot to the point that you're going to get really severe inflation and currency collapse that a lot of the gold investors are fearing. Um, what are some green flags you look for when you were dating? I think the most important one is somebody who can admit when they do something wrong. Like, a lot of people have to like just can never admit when they've they've done something wrong, or can or don't hold themselves accountable. And nobody's perfect. I've made mistakes too. Everybody does. So I think that's a positive. Also, just having good values, and like very being honest and trustworthy. So yeah. Do you think the online adult industry has significantly damaged men in the dating market? Yes, it has. It has probably lowered motivation for men to go out there and find their romantic partners. So I do think it definitely has a role. Um, so yeah, and personal. So like, let's see. Do you think that? And also, I think the other thing really shared faith. Like you should date somebody of a similar religious background to you. Um, I I think that like I wouldn't go as far as like denominations, but like the in general though that's important. Um, Thoughts on how to navigate pushy women trying to seduce you at church? Um, let's see. I mean, if are you married? Are you single? Are you in a committed relationship? Like, um, are these women you would want to date? Like that's kind of I don't have an answer. Um, will you be addressing the 80/20 rule? Yeah, I did talk about that earlier in the stream, so watch it earlier. Um, yeah. Um, let's see. That's kind of my answer to that question. Um, let's see what else I gotta. Have you ever read The Millionaire Next Door? I mean, I've read snippets of it and summaries. Um, I don't think it's as insightful as. I mean, it depends. Like if you're at a very basic level of personal finance, I think it could be helpful, but it's really just to let people save a high percentage of their income. I think is the main lesson from that. And yeah, it is important to save, but that's not the whole picture, especially in the world of a cost of living crisis. You need to also boost your top line. Like you can't, if you have a low income, you can't save your way to wealth unless if you're like one of the most shrewd investors in the world. You need to have a combination of high earning potential and be a disciplined saver and a moderately difficult disciplined saver. Like you need to save at a level that's sustainable, that you're not going to feel too deprived that you have a midlife crisis and blow it all years later. Um, are we in an AI bubble, or do you think economically, other than being highly specialized, where will the job opportunities be? I think it'll be more entrepreneurial world. I think, yeah, specialization, opportunities that require like jobs that require higher stakes and level of trust that you're not going to trust a machine to do it. It usually means like bigger dollar transactions if you're more in sales, or things that require like more human connection. Um, I think like genuine human connection and trust is going to come at a premium in the AI world because it'll make everything else a lot cheaper, and that will be decline. Thoughts on how social dynamics change both for the better and worse once the man is married? I'm not the one to ask. I'm not married yet, so I can't really help you with that one. Um, what are your thoughts on surrogacy? Um, I am generally against it unless if you naturally cannot have children, and even then, the Catholic Church generally is not very a big fan of it. I think the only time I think it's acceptable is maybe a last resort, and I just don't think it's good for kids to grow up without a mother and a father. So I don't like the idea of people having like being a single parent voluntarily. Like that's not that's I'm not a fan of that. I think people don't need like both a good mother figure and a good father figure to have a good outcome in life. I don't want to intentionally handicap my future children's development by not having them within a um, a stable married family. Um, let's see. What indicators other than the hopes and dreams of billionaires do you use to determine the trajectory of the job market? Um, well, I mean, you have to just look at technology shifts because technology will commoditize certain things and allow other things to be doable that weren't doable previously. So I think it's more and technology shifts that are accessible to the general public. And also see what consumers complain that is too usually things that a lot of people want that are scarce to find or very expensive are oftentimes business and economic opportunities. Um, like a good example of this, probably private education. It's not tech, but like because of the recent political changes and perceptions of public safety, a lot of people, especially here in California, do not trust the public school system anymore. And so therefore and so there probably is opportunities to create more private schools for people who don't want to participate in the public school system, particularly middle class families who are shut out of the current crop of of private schools. So yeah, that's kind of thing. Look at the other places where people want a lot of stuff and the prices are either very expensive or there are shortages, and that's kind of where you can see opportunities. It's also second order thinking, and I'm going to do a video about this later in February about second order thinking. And Howard Marks has a book called The Most Important Thing, which goes into a lot of this. But the idea is not thinking about the immediate consequences of certain trends or current events or market price action, but more in the sense is what is the reaction function of other people or other participation or other things or other forces in response to that shift, or answering the question, and then what? So, for example, say like the price of gold goes down another 20% from here, and then what? Like, what happens? And there's just other like that's where the opportunities is employing your second order thinking skills. Um, both lower and upper class marry for financial reasons as a main motivator, but what's the different mentality when concerned having wealth? I disagree with you. Um, oh, sorry, I thought you said an upper middle class. Sorry, a lower and upper class. Um, yeah, I mean, I did a whole video about this, about the different motivations. Like lower class marry people for financial stability, whereas upper class factor in financial reasons to prevent moving down. And to, but I think, and or to like ensure like they're still part of like a certain community socially. But yeah, I mean, the one is more of extractive and the other one is more defensive, if I had to say what the difference is. Um, let's see. Do you think that the connection between people brought about by the internet and social media weakens the state because it eliminates geographical boundaries? Um, I mean, I think it makes it harder for the state to control the general public narrative. That's one I think it is. And so as a result, propaganda efforts have to be a lot more subtle than they used to be. That would be what in general, I don't think it really the state is controlled by hard power, and I don't think the internet um, can really threaten hard power. But I think that um, I think the internet in general allows for a more free society because it allows dissident voices to get out there. And like with for example with Musk buying X, like you just need one wealthy person to buck against the establishment narrative to allow a free floating platform for the other side. Um, let's see. Do you think that let's see a communication between people's brought about? Let's see. Yeah, shout out to Copy. Thanks. That book was gifted to me by a YouTube subscriber who mailed it to my office, and I it was a great read. I highly recommend Leaving a Legacy. I'll talk about that more when I do my book special. Would you recommend accounting or finance as a college major? I'd recommend it if you have an interest in accounting or finance. I still think they're both um, relevant. I think accounting is more at risk of AI disruption than finance is, but yeah, I still think they're both relatively useful majors. Um, let's see. Thoughts on how marriage changes social dynamic. All right, let's see. You already asked me that question, and I'm not going to answer it just because I'm not married yet. So I am that's why I'm very hesitant to give specific dating advice because you should really only be taking dating advice from people who have successful marriages with people you would want to be married to. So if you're ever looking for somebody to help you with your dating life, like in the dating coach world or anything like that, try to find somebody who has the outcome that you want. Um, and has been able to do it despite other challenges in their lives, especially speaking. Um, let's see. This is the beginning. Do you have any thoughts on the recent Japanese bond yield spikes? I do. I'm still doing some research about this myself. Like, I mean, it is kind of a issue just in general that the back end of the curve is not going down despite central banks around the world, particularly in the Western countries, are guiding towards lowering their front ends. And Japan has brought back inflation, yet their balance sheet is way too much debt to sustain like more normal interest rates. But I don't really have like a bigger picture like investable conclusion for it yet. I was going to do a presentation about it for the channel, but it's just I just it's just my conclusion is too inconclusive, I think, to do it fairly. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about that global yield curve actually on my Australia speeches that are coming up as part of the tour. So yeah, if you're in Australia and maybe and want to talk to me about it there, that's going to be your opportunity. I'm in a pre-med track with humanities chops. How do I turn doctor into more money than just a salary? Um, well, I mean, I don't think be if you're going to be a doctor just for the money, that's not a very smart move. It's just the amount of time that you're sacrificing in terms of your 20s and early 30s and the debt that you probably have to take on is not worth it unless you're really genuinely passionate about helping people through practicing medicine. Um, so that's with that out of the way, you would need to build a private practice of some sort, like a surgery clinic or something like or a specialist practice that you can charge higher rates than like a standard GP and have it turn into a business and you eventually hire other doctors to work under you. Or you are an expert at like a biotech company. You become like the scientist partner at a biotech company inventing like some new anti-aging treatment or something like that. Uh, yeah, what's it called? Do the divorce rate and the family court system scare you? Oh, it definitely does. I mean, I don't think any rational man would not be scared of it. But at the same time, um, uh, it's you can't let that fear, if you meet the right person, scare you from getting married. Um, I think the upside of having a happy family and a life partner is worth more than the downside of a divorce. But you just have to be pickier with who you choose to get married to. Honestly, like it's a. I just think it doesn't just scare me away from getting married, but it raised the stakes on who I've decided to get married to, and made me a lot more selective when I was dating. Um, can I bring a plus one to the event in April? Yes, you can. Yeah, of course you can bring a plus one. It's just what's it called? Um, let's see. The next question. If you need a separate ticket though for the plus one, because I have limited spaces, but you can bring one. Do you think that people should try to marry young in their early 20s? I don't think there's a certain age that you should try to get married. Once you're out of, I don't think people should get married before they're finished with their undergraduate degrees. That's one thing I am pretty solid on. I think getting married while you've not had any experience in the post college real world um, can be an issue. But then when it comes to once you're out of college and you kind of more know what city you're going to live in for at least more than a year, like if you're a transient person moving around a lot, that's not really good for getting married either. But once you've kind of established yourself, it's more about when you meet the right person who's getting married to. Like if it takes you, if you meet her at 22, that's great. If it takes you until you're 42, that works as well. But you should probably make the effort to try to find that person when you're once you're graduated from college. So starting about like 23 years old is when you should start trying to find who you're going to marry. But you can't put a square peg into a round hole. Like you have to, it might take you a while to find that person and be prepared for it to take over a decade to to find that person. And don't lower your standards um, just to get married by a certain age. Um, the curated experience is the private dinner that it comes with all the food and the drinks um, and all the and it's a more exclusive group and more limited conversation, where the meetups is where I have a speech in front of a larger audience, and it's a chance to network with the group and also hear me speak, and they're much larger crowds, so that's kind of the difference. The curated experiences are smaller groups and all the expenses associated with it are included, whereas the meetups are more of a general speaking type engagement. um, so yeah, that's the difference between the curated experience. That's just another name for the private dinners. I've some of them times I've thought about doing golf events, but it seems like you guys aren't as interested in doing golf events as private dinners based on the polls I've done on this. So I'm generally sticking, at least for this first round of the curated experiences, with private dinners. Um, yeah. Let's see. How Okay, I think Mr. ERA Pages is trolling me with these questions. I mean, I'm a little bit dense sometimes. I don't catch on when people are trolling me when I'm doing these live streams, but I'm getting better at it. Um, let's see. Um, you were actually serious? Uh, I mean, I don't know. Your questions seem to be kind of trolly. Um, yeah. So that's why I make that comment. But um, let's see. Um, let's see. What was I going to say? I don't now. I've kind of lost my train of thought. Let me. How's life? Well, life is good right now. I'm doing the tour, working hard on growing my business, and I'm getting married soon. So my life is good right now. Um, let's see. Um, next question, really. Let's. Um, will you be bringing my colleague Samantha and me to Atlanta? It's to be determined. There'll probably be one of buddy from the Spearhead team coming. It depends on all their schedules, though. Honest, so that has not been decided yet. Um, let's see. How do I develop? I'll answer one of these questions. What's it called? How should we develop deeper bonds with other men that you meet through the church community? Well, I mean, you just go and try like you would with other friends. Go and like invite them out to happy hour and get a chance to chat and get to know them, and then have just find out what hobbies are, and then just do planned shared activities. That's generally how I meet my friends. Um, let's see. How's AI going to affect emerging market countries? I see the effects in the US, but not in those countries yet. I think emerging market countries are big losers from more of a loser from AI than the US is, because a lot of the way those emerging market countries are moving up in the world is through doing the lower value work that was previously being offshored, whether as manufacturing or services. Like, for example, call centers are a common example of offshoring services, or hiring coders in underdeveloped countries that can code for a fraction of the cost of somebody in America, or people who do like video editing offshore. Like, those things are being now replaced by AI. I know, because I used to hire an offshore editor to do this channel, and I didn't really and then I ended up AI software got better and made similar quality editing or that for a lot lower price, so I switched. And that's just like one micro example of a bigger trend. Um, and so I think a lot of outsourced service jobs that were part of the bigger growth portion, I think countries particularly like India and the Philippines are the most affected by this, are going to be undercut because of AI being able to replace them. I call it the AI ladder pull, where the historical way that emerging markets countries move up is through Western countries or developed economies outsourcing their low-end manufacturing and services to these countries that don't can't may not be able to do it as well, but they can do it at such a fraction of the cost that it makes sense to offshore. And then as those people get more educated and more skilled, they do higher and higher level work until they're now a more developed economy and their consumer society is big enough that they can sustain higher GDP per capita. And so now, with AI and robots coming down the pipe, there is a lot less reason to offshore. And so those jobs that were the ladder to help people step up out of abject poverty into the next level are going to be gone. And so I think AI, emerging market countries, is going to cause a lot of political and economic instability in the emerging world. Yeah, thank you for the super chat. Have a good night. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you in April when I head down to the South. What's it called? So that's my answer, is that I think the US and developed economies are in better shape than emerging market countries long run because of AI. Let's see. Next question. How can some of us become rich by temporarily relocating to developed African cities? I mean, there's probably a lot of opportunity investing in private equity in Africa. I just don't have the political connections or the boots on the ground knowledge to do it properly, which is why I've not pursued that. But if you really dedicated yourself to building a career around that, you can probably make a substantial fortune. It would help if you had social connections to the elites of a lot of these sub-Saharan African countries and could speak their native languages. But that's my take on that. Do food prices ever come down? Will we ever see the dollar menu again, or is the money supply expanded permanently to make it impossible? Oh, food prices come down. We've seen egg prices go down by over 50% in the last year or so, because there was a bird flu related shortage that caused egg supplies to be artificially low. So we have seen food prices decline significantly since the like in previous time history. Like, look at the commodities market. Like, most of the time the futures go down. The reason why grocery store prices don't go down as like commodities generally do is because like the cost of running a business, whether it's energy to ship the food, the processing cost, distribution, paying all the wages for all the people on every step of the value chain and the corporation selling you the food, and the margin needed for the grocery store, those don't go down with commodity prices. So that's kind of the where the bottleneck is. And I think usually what happens with food is that food will just stay this, which is food prices in real terms has gone down a lot. Like 100 years ago, food was well over 10% of a family's budget. And now, even with the recent acceleration in food prices, it's 3% or less of a typical American family budget. So, as a result, food has gone down a lot adjusted for inflation. It's usually what happens is that instead of food going down nominally, it'll stay around the same price, but everything else will go up in price in an inflationary economy. So like your wages will go up, your rents will go up, whatever other things will go up like at the normal pace of inflation, but food will stay the same. And so in purchasing power terms, food goes down. And food generally has been going down in real terms in the United States. Or what restaurants will do instead of lowering prices, and this may be why we had an obesity problem partially, is like instead of cutting the prices, a lot of restaurants will just give bigger portions. So maybe like instead of like you go out to an Italian restaurant for dinner, instead of them cutting the price of your pasta, they'll just give free bread again when they didn't in the past. Um, it'd be because like they want to maintain like their sticky wages and other considerations, but if their input costs are going down, that will come back to the consumer either through bigger portions at restaurants or the reverse of shrinkflation. So you'll just have like the same price but more food stuff in the package, or just they stay the same price and everything else goes up at a faster pace. Are you coming to Toronto anytime soon? Yeah, I will be in Toronto. I think I said this earlier in the live stream on April 9th. So it'll be about 2 months. I will be there. I have to wait for the snow to melt. I don't really like cold weather. Um, is holding multiple citizenships become a new trend? Um, I don't think it's a new trend. I think it's a product of increased levels of immigration. Like people have ties to their home countries, whether they were born there or their parents were born there. So it's easier to get secondary citizenships. And so it's just more awareness of it. I don't think it's becoming more of a trend. In fact, if anything, a lot of populist politicians like Senator Bernie Moreno in Ohio have proposed getting rid of dual citizenship in America and forcing people to renounce their foreign citizenships, which I think would be a terrible idea. I mean, you could maybe say that you don't want the president of the United States to have a dual citizenship. Maybe that might be the only kind of reasonable ban if you were going to have one. But yeah, I mean, in general, I don't think that dual citizenships are on the rise for any sort of trendy thing. Like you see all the time, maybe these advertisements, oh, you got to go buy a second passport. There might be a few rich people who do that, but it's not as common as you would be believed to be because of the internet. Have you picked the location for your Atlantic to get together? No, I've not. And I am open for recommendations, both for restaurants for the private dinner and venues like that I can speak at because I'm going to have to rent a space to speak. Um, I'm not, I fairly probably in a nicer part of town, but I don't really know that much about Atlanta. I've never been before. So any help on suggestions for venues for either the speaking event or the private dinner would be greatly appreciated. Do you recommend having an MBA in today's world? It depends on why. I think MBAs are good for two purposes. One, if your company is willing to pay for it and you need it to advance um, where you're working, or if you're looking to switch jobs and not just jobs, but switch professions. Like say you want to switch from finance to management consulting, or from investment banking to like corporate management. It's a good way to reskill and retool, and gives you a valid excuse to take the time to reskill or retool. And I do recommend if you're going to get an MBA, you need to do it like a top 10 to 15 program. Otherwise, the ROI drops a lot. So that's my answer. If you're not trying to change careers, and you can't get into a top 15 program, forget about it. Um, how long did it take you to get good at public speaking? Uh, if I had to say, I mean, I learned to overcome the fear of public speaking. I was in the YMCA Youth and Government when I was in high school, a senior in high school, and I was in the Youth Senate here in California. And I saw all my fellow students propose these really bad bills in the Youth Senate. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go up one day and I'm just going to argue against every proposal, whether I agree with it or not. And that's what I did for like 2 straight days. Every proposal, I would come up to this podium in Sacramento and argue against it. And by doing that, I learned how to public speak. And that's where I got the basics. But my ability to, I conquered the fear, but it was still rough. Um, and so um, I learned to get better and refine it through doing Toastmasters for about a year and a half here locally. And that's probably what it took for me to get from like a guy who's not afraid of public speaking to somebody who can actually public speak decently. And I've spoken a lot. I get better the more I do it. Um, let's see. How would you like to receive recommendations for Atlanta location? You can number of ways. You can email me through the email on this channel, or you can contact me via DM on my website. Um, I'm just gonna type it in right here. Let me know if the link should work. So like you can, those are the ways you can do it. Um, or you, so like, yeah, just either DM me through website or email me through the email that I have. So how common is it for wealthy people to borrow against their stock portfolio? Is it a legitimate thing to do, or is it just a lifestyle debt that take on dressed as smart finance? The answer is it depends on the interest rate. If rates are low, it's a smart thing to do. Like during the ZERP era, you could get like sub 5% interest rate borrowing against your stock. It's way more tax efficient to do that than to sell the stock. And you also don't have to give up the upside necessarily. Um, with rates as and they're higher, it increasingly makes less sense. Think about it. Like if you're paying 25% on your capital gains and you have a 10% interest rate environment for a margin for one of these margin style loans, then like you in just 2 and 3 years you'll be paying more in interest, unless if the stock goes up a lot in that time period, than you would if you were paying just the tax. So it's a product of rates is my answer. Um, so yeah, um, let's see. Any thoughts on Google PM courses? PM, do you mean project management courses? I've heard those are actually pretty good. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think project management is going to be like a high paying profession that's going to stick around for a while. I don't, it's not as at risk of disruption from AI. In fact, project managers will be the one using AI to become more efficient. Um, how, let's see. Um, how as a 30 something year old do you tend to maintain your youthful appearance? Don't drink alcohol, get enough sleep, um, try not to have too stressful of a lifestyle. And yeah, that's really it. Um, and work out and stay healthy. Like you can't, the rest of it is just genetics at that point. You can't really control it. If you have like, maybe like if you have a very, very bad hairline, you can do something about like that. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it's generally just maintaining good health and then it's genes at that point. Um, let's see. A woman friend asked me where she can meet higher class men with good family values. Um, I mean, I used to always advise for my sisters. I don't think they really took it, but they've managed to find their way. Is to start playing golf. I think that there is some prole drift in the golf community, but like in general, there it is a class signal. It's like it's something that upwardly mobile men and higher class men like to do is play golf, especially if they're not drinking when they're playing golf. Maybe joining a tennis club might be another one, or social clubs in general that have somewhat of a financial barrier to entry. Um, but I think golf would be the most practical advice for that question. Um, there are only young men who play golf. I started playing golf at 14. A lot of my friends started playing at 5. Um, and I played way more golf in my teens and my 20s than I do now because I don't have time now because of other things going on in my life. So, um, yeah. So I think younger people actually probably like their 20s and probably have more time to play golf than people in their 30s and 40s. Um, how can normal folks build relationships with banks? What do you need the relationship with a bank for? Um, so yeah, that's my question on that one. Let's see. I might see what other questions I've got here. Um, all right, I'm just trying to read through some of these. It's just hard to find. There's so many comments here um, that I can't find the question. So if you asked one earlier, please bump it up and ask it again because um, it's hard to find them going through the archives. Um, what advice are getting rich and acquiring equity if you don't know any rich people and grew up in a poor family? What would you do in that person's situation? Well, you would first need to develop like a minimum amount of like value, like of employable skills that make you worthwhile to begin with. Usually that's through college plus some applied like internships or something like that. If assuming you've already done your education um, and you've already got a career, the thing is that you just need to figure out. It's just like general entrepreneurship at that point. Like if you and if you want to net and just networking at the right places, you can live in a newer money community if you can afford it, or just travel to there to go to events, like join interest groups. I mean, I don't really think you don't need to um, get rich and find rich people to start a business. I think you have a venture backed startup, if that's why you're asking this question, you got to go just to the venture capital communities um, and build a good minimum viable product. Like at least in the United States, if you have a good business that's a good proof of concept, the financial system here is developed enough that you will find a way to get funding. Like it doesn't require you having to play a game of like social climbing to do that. So yeah, I think it's the same. Watch my video about how to get rich in entrepreneurship. It's the advice doesn't really change. Um, thoughts on the difference between the amount of boys versus girls being born? Um, it's not that significant. It's maybe 1 to 2% difference. Um, I mean, I think that it's the countries that have had like selective what's it called, selective abortions, that it has a real problem. It just means that the those women can have higher expectations than they would otherwise. But yeah, like I think in the bigger picture of things, like as an individual, if you're worried about your own dating life, I wouldn't really be thinking about that. The gap just isn't big enough for you to care. Um, let's see. Why do you say live in a new money community rather than old money one? Because new money people are more open, have more open personalities generally. They're more willing to socialize with people in other classes, and they're more willing to do things and invest and build businesses and stuff. Whereas old money likes to stick to itself. Like that's the main difference. I think it's just a matter of openness. Um, let's see. Next question. What do you think of the Kevin Warsh nomination? I already talked about that earlier in the live stream, but I am cautiously optimistic about it. Um, I think I would have liked to have had him picked as a Fed chair for a while. So yeah, and he's from like the Druckenmiller kind of like philosophy of economics and investing, same kind of um, social circle and like coaching tree, for a lack of a better term, as Scott Bessent, who's been, I think, one of the better members of Trump's cabinet. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic for Warsh. Um, Thoughts on Allianz for a retirement plan for diversification of investments? I'm not going to talk about specific investments on this chat. If you want to talk about that, schedule a consultation with me. And or if you just have any general questions for me that aren't related to wealth management or investments, you can also schedule a like a consulting call with me via my Calendly. Um, let's see. Thoughts on extra biblical books like the Book of Enoch and the Maccabees and being revealed to the world in the past century? Well, if they didn't make the Bible, there's probably a reason why they didn't make the canon. I've read about like brief summaries of them, but I don't have an opinion strong enough to really um, discuss it on in the public. Thoughts on Gary Stevenson? A lot of you guys reach out to me about him. If he wanted to come on the channel or wanted me to come on his channel, I'd be glad to have a discussion with him. I think he has pretty much the opposite philosophy on me. He cares way too much about inequality. And I generally have the philosophy on it comes to inequality, that we shouldn't inequality doesn't matter if the pie is growing and that people's living standards overall are improving. That's what the priority should be. We shouldn't care that X person is X percent richer than Y person, or the CEOs make 500 times more than the average employee. That's just envy fodder. Like the real picture is that can everybody afford to live in a decent house? Like, and it doesn't require taking from somebody else in order to improve the life as a whole. That's what modern capitalism and economics is about, is that you can have growth that's not and improve living standards without it being a zero sum game. At what net worth does it make sense to diversify your assets? Um, I mean, there's in general, I would probably start to say like when you're breaking like $250,000, excluding your personal residence, that's when I think it starts to make sense. But it really depends on your own situation. Everybody has a different situation with their own finances and things like that. Um, what if the pie is growing and billionaires control all of it? The billionaires don't control all of it. The thing that you want is you just don't want laws or governments to basically create artificial monopolies that allow people to unfairly keep their riches like at the expense of allowing competition. As long as the rules of the game are fair in the sense that anybody can compete and in the business world without too harsh of regulations beyond like basic needs for like public safety and etc. Um, that's what I'm fine with. Like it's if anything, I think the one thing that you could do maybe is do a little bit more enforcement on antitrust to allow more competition in various industries. But that's kind of now going into uh, a whole nother can of worms. Um, Advice on getting rich and acquiring equity when rich people don't know you and grew up in a poor family. I answered this question already. I think I don't know if you were on there, but again, watch my video called How to Get Rich in Entrepreneurship. It also depends what country you live in, because my advice is very American centric. If you live outside the United States, it's a completely different ballgame. Um, Hi, Nick. Missed you at the Boston meetup. Well, I'm coming back to Boston on April 11th. So, for those who didn't to come when I was there in October, I will be back in a little over 2 months. Um, let's see. Opinion on entrepreneurship while balancing a full-time job. Um, I think that's probably for most, unless if you're in a business that prohibits you from doing a business on the side, that's usually a good way to start until you have enough traction where you can feel confident to leave your job. Like, so yeah, I mean, I would just dedicate a certain amount of hours per day. This is how I did with side projects when I was employed. I would say, look, I'd block off 3 hours a day during the week and like one half a day, like a 6 to 8 hours on the weekend, one day of the weekend. So I can still at least have one full weekend day off and I don't burn out, but I know like this is the time I need to dedicate. And this wasn't necessarily business projects because when I was working in corporate America, I wasn't trying to start a business on the side. I did other things like I studied for credentials that I needed to help advance my career. I wrote a book. I pursued different hobbies and things, but like in a dedicated way that I kind of needed to set out time for it. Um, does Greenland become a state or a U.S. territory? Um, I think it could happen eventually. It seems like the current deal is just to get kind of like some sovereign bases, kind of like what like the I can't pronounce the I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of this, but like Akatiri and Dalecarlia, I think those two sovereign like British bases that are technically part of the UK, but they're on the island of Cyprus. That seems to be the most likely outcome right now. But I do see a world where the U.S. either buys Greenland from Denmark or the Danish people vote for independence, and kind of like what happened with Texas, they vote for annexation. Um, but I think Trump got what he really needed, which was the mineral rights and the not being blocked by the Danish environmental lobby from developing um, the mining capabilities of Greenland. Are there any new money areas in New England? Yeah, there are. And I recommend watching my video, The Geography of Wealth, the North South Divide. And I include Boston in there. So that's the ones that I know of. But like New England is not like a part of the country I'm an expert in. I've only been there. Well, actually, no, I've been there 4 times in my life. Twice to Boston, once to to New Hampshire and Vermont, and then once to Maine and Rhode Island and Connecticut. But yeah, are there? What was I going to say? If you were in business with a few retired lawyers as a young guy, would you recommend? What would you recommend pursuing? We do tax liens, but have no deal come up. I mean, again, what sir? I mean, I need to know kind of more of the details in that. Like, what services do you guys can do that people want demand for? It's a much longer conversation. Schedule a consultation if you want me to talk about that. Thoughts on the impact of the Telegram CEO's 100 plus children and eventual 1,000 grandchildren will have on American business? He says he has no upper limit on children. Well, I mean, I don't really know how well these kids will turn out without a what's it called, proper father in their life. Like, I feel like these people, these pronatalists, um, billionaires who are promoting these kind of things, they're not doing it for a legitimate cause. To be quite honest, um, I think that, like, if you really wanted the goal of having more smart people who will be good future leaders of the world, or just in general increase birth rates, and you want it to be an actual positive outcome of society, um, what you would do instead is, like, he Telegram has a lot of employees, or in the case of Musk, he has a lot of employees. Why don't you just offer, like, significant salary boost to your employees who have more than 3 kids? So they, like, oh, I'll give any of one of my employees who has, well, and who's happily married, who has more, like, kid 3 and beyond, an extra $80,000 a year in salary. It'd probably cost them a lot less than the maintenance cost of these random children that they're fathering and not involved with. And these kids will have much better situations because they'll have their parents with high paying jobs who care about them and can devote more time to them. Like, the solution to this birth rate thing is not just a bunch of rich people having 1,000 kids. The solution to this is having more upper middle class people, instead of having 1 to 2 kids, having 3 to 4 kids, and they will have much better results. You'll have, and these guys are big employers. They have employees that they know they think could be good parents, or at least are have some enough integrity that they would put them on their payroll. That's your solution. Just give them, like, pay raises tied to having large families. Um, what are your thoughts on Irvine, California? Well, I mean, I live very close to Irvine, California. It's kind of the place where things that are too big to fit in Newport Beach go into. It's a upper middle class community that is very well planned and organized. And yeah, it has a large international community as well. Um, I don't really have much other to say than that. It's got the bowling alley I go to is there. A lot of the golf courses I go to are there. The Irvine Spectrum is a good shopping center. A lot of businesses are moving to Irvine because it's relatively business friendly for California standards. Don't really have much else to say. Um, yeah, let's see. Is Canada ever going to break free from the WEF's economic hold on it? I think you overpower. I think you're giving too much credit to the World Economic Forum. I think Canada's problem is their national identity is built on being in opposition to the United States. And so even if it's counterproductive, they'll just take whatever the trendy opposite opinion is of the United States. And they are paying the consequences for that. I'll probably do an update about my thoughts on Canada for my speech that I do in Toronto in a couple months. So I will be speaking about I try to make all the speeches when I travel locally themed. So my Toronto speech will be my updated thoughts on the economic future of Canada. I'm British and I watched your Getting Rich video. I don't know what to do. I'm very familiar how YouTube works. Shall I start there? Yeah, I mean, if you're bullish on the creator economy, you should try to find a way to use AI to provide, like, a cost efficient and turnkey platform for creators to make their lives easier. Like, instead of betting on yourself, unless if you have some really unique ideas that you think that you should make content based off of, if you're trying to do it from a business perspective, it probably makes more sense to supply the picks and shovels to other creators than becoming a creator yourself. But let's see. Thoughts on my neuro? All right. I'm not gonna. It's another troll question. Um, let's see. My question is, do you have any clients or thoughts about folks moving to Puerto Rico to take advantage of the capital gains tax? Yeah, I mean, I know people who have considered it. It's usually if you're about to sell a business, is when it makes sense. You move there when your business is growing a few years before the liquidity event, live there for a while, and you'll save a lot on taxes. I mean, I'm not sure if people would want to, unless if you really like island life. Some people really like living in Puerto Rico, and if you like that Caribbean style life and you're an American citizen, Puerto Rico might not be a bad place to do it. But I've never been to Puerto Rico, so I can't really say about what it's like living there. However, I'm thinking about doing a special Puerto Rico meetup if the channel breaks either 250 or 300,000 subscribers. Like, I'm going to do special benchmarks for every major subscriber benchmark between like 100K and a million by going to an exotic meetup location. And Puerto Rico is one of the places I'm considering for doing that. Um, yeah, are your hobbies based on producing or consuming? That's a decent intelligence indicator. Well, it's also a time preference indicator. It's also a social class indicator. Um, does it ever make sense to skip industry job and build this directly out of college if they have the skills and capital? Well, if it's a younger industry where there's so much in flux and having experience doesn't matter because the rules are constantly changing, yeah, it could make sense. Generally, it does not. I generally recommend at least 3 to 5 years of industry experience before going on your own, so you don't make a lot of the mistakes that just come from just simply not knowing how your industry works. But unless if it's a very dynamic, brand new industry where there really aren't many long-standing industry experts or standard industry practices, then it could make sense to start right out of school. Or if you have an idea that's already gaining traction, you already have like a strong initial set of customers and proof of demand. That might be the other reason. But then you would want to bring on an experienced partner to help you navigate some of the industry inside stuff that you don't know. Um, let's see. That's oh, there's software. Well, the software is very vague. There's a lot of software out there. Like, is it like emerging AI agents that never come out to market yet, or like building like software to program the underlying programs like humanoid robots or other things that just aren't in them, or is it something that's like a more established type of software like cybersecurity or um, like standard like SaaS enterprise software? Like, it's very different. Yeah. Why is the dollar losing its value and gold so high? So what to do? Um, I mean, the dollar is losing its value because it was overvalued, and you have a lot of people questioning whether they should still invest disproportionately in the US versus their home countries. I did a whole presentation about the history of the US dollar and dollar cycles back in September, and I recommend you watch that for um, more about what's going on with the dollar because we've had a bear market in the dollar now. We're on year four, like we're at the end of year three. It started August of 2022, so this is like year four of dollar bear market, and it's likely going to last another 3 to 4 years. So um, let's see. But let's see. Now I'm trying to scroll for. I see if any questions that I've missed. Okay, we got a new one. Do you believe in not what you know, but who you know? Gary Stevenson said, if you want to get rich, have a rich dad. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of comments on this channel, particularly on my videos about agency. I basically said that like personal agency is meaningless. All it matters is what zip code you were born in or what parents you have. And I think it's a very defeatist attitude. Like, at that point, like, what's the point of even trying? and leaving your basement. You should just play video games all day if you're not born in the elite by that kind of logic. Um, it's very counterproductive, even if it was true. But I don't really think it is true, at least in the United States. Maybe in England, the UK is a little bit more class rigid, and so they're especially if you don't work in the financial industry. So it might be more true there. Uh, but at least in the United States, this is one my experience, that's not really true. Like if you people might judge you originally if you're not from a conventional background, but if you prove that you're competent and you're smart and you have a good idea or a good proof of concept, you will get funded. You will be able to do business. Things will be able to happen. Um, yeah, so I think that's wrong. And I think a lot of, again, it's inequality. People just don't want to, they just want to complain, and it's just a weaponized form of envy. Um, let's see. Um, what's it called? What was I going to say? Um, other questions that we have. I got to scroll. I think I'm going to do another 15 to 20 minutes on this live stream. I'm just going to have a little bit of a water break and put in your questions in the meantime. And also, while I'm waiting for questions, I'll just make some other like housekeeping announcements. We're about to hit 100K. I'm open to suggestions on what I should do for the 100K special, but I will do a special live stream explaining all the books in the bookshelf. I've added a bunch of new ones since I've last done it because I've been going through a lot of my old library, and so it will be good. And I will also maybe do like another bonus event or something. And if you want to reach out and stay updated on events or YouTube videos or other things we're doing on the channel, I recommend checking out my Substack. And I'm also going to be continuing the tour all across the country and the world. I'm going to Australia in a couple days because I'm having two meetups there, one in the Gold Coast and one in Sydney. And then I will also be having meetups in February in Scottsdale, Arizona, Tampa, Florida, and Palm Beach, Florida. There'll also be, in addition to our regular meetups, private dinners that you can join. And then we're going to have meetups in March in San Francisco, Fresno, and Seattle. And in April will be New York, Boston, Toronto, Chicago, and Atlanta and Dallas. And with May, we'll be in Kansas City. So that's kind of going to be where all the meetups are, at least for the first half of the year. We'll do more later. And then you can find them all by going to my Eventbrite page. Visiting the Scottsdale Mint. No, I don't think I'm going to have time to go to the Scottsdale Mint. I'm going to be there for a fairly short period of time. Please consider organizing a cruise or all-inclusive resort vacation for the community. One suitable for us that's not obnoxious to wild drinking. You know what would actually be really fun if I had enough people who are willing to do it and I had an event planner to help me organize it who wouldn't charge me $30,000 for the privilege to do it, would be to set up an Antarctica cruise. That's kind of that'd be the very fun. It'd be very unique. I don't think people go to the South Pole to get hammered. So, and that's the one place that I'd like to cruise that I haven't done so yet. I've heard the Red Sea, like, could be enough, like, if it wasn't for like geopolitical issues, it would be another fun place to do it that I haven't yet. But I think that would be the one I'd want to do if I was going to organize like a cruise for the Analyzing Finance with Nick audience. It'd be Antarctica. What car do I drive? I'm not going to say that just for privacy and safety reasons. I'm not going to talk about what car I drive. I don't want people following me around. Let's see. What question else am I going to say? Opinions on the welfare capitalist system we've had post World War II when the middle class is booming. Well, I mean, as we've seen what's going on in Europe now with a lot of their fiscal situations falling apart, I think the welfare system just doesn't work like in the way like there for a number of reasons. One, like it causes more atomization with your family because like if you have like strong enough of a social safety net for old people, you just don't people feel more willing to disown or disengage from their parents, which has a lot of issues in society. Second, it's just the fiscal drag, like especially with declining birth rates and longer lifespans. You have more younger people paying into the system, more older people were living off the system, younger people paying into it, and these are all turning upside down financially really quickly. So yeah, that's my take on that one. I'm not a fan of the welfare state. It's going to be very politically difficult to abolish it, but I think the financial reality will eventually come to get it. Let's see. Yeah, visiting the ice walls. Well, I mean, the ice walls are Alaska, and I did do that cruise when I was in high school. It's actually really cool to see the glaciers and the big chunks of ice crack off of it and the sound it makes. Alaska is probably one of the most underrated tourist destinations in America. I highly recommend going on an Alaska cruise once in your life in the summer. So any ideas where to find young women that want kids aside from church? My church is very few, and dating apps are almost none of the girls I want to meet kids. Where do you live? That's kind of the big question. You don't have to say sixth city, but general metropolitan area. I think that you just probably have to just go out and about in public. Think about if you were in her shoes, how would you spend your Saturdays and Sundays? How would you spend your free time? And like that might be a good way to start. And I think there are some people on dating apps too. It's just a lot to filter with. But yeah. And you can maybe try if it's you can try maybe I don't know what it depends on your denomination, but a lot of churches have young adults groups. Some of them are stronger than others, so you might have to go to a different parish within your denomination than the closest one to where you live. And also just get out there and be social and do things that you want to do, whether it's networking for your business goals, whether it's hobbies or other things, and you'll meet other people eventually and get invited to events. And you can check out local events in your town. Like you can do that through like Eventbrite or local community type things. And that might be a way to meet people. It's going to skew older, a lot of those, especially if you live in a suburb area. But assuming you live in a city that has a large amount of young educated people, you'll eventually find your chances. And it's going to take you maybe longer than you think, but it will eventually, I think, find your chances. Thoughts on the politicization of the Protestant church? That's a little bit vague. Let's see. Life's taking a leadership position in my college student managed investment fund. I think it's a good idea if you can get it. It shows initiative. And yeah, you can use that. If you do a good job with the portfolio and you can explain your process well, it probably is a useful conversation topic for job interviews. Let's go to Alaska. You know what? I actually went back when the channel was really small. I think the first live stream when I announced it, Somebody wrote a comment saying, "Would you ever go to Kodiak Island, Alaska?" And my answer to that was, I will go to Kodiak Island, Alaska for the channel and do a meetup if we ever broke 1 million subscribers. So if that's when we're going to go to Alaska, is when you hit a million, when we hit 1 million subscribers. So spread the word, get us to grow, and we'll have a big 1 million subscriber party in Kodiak Island, Alaska, and have good crab legs and salmon and golf and other things you do on Kodiak Island. Um, let's see. That's but yeah, they let the original K get some special tier. Um, yeah, it's just a question. I can't really say how early you can get onto the channel. I mean, the first time I met somebody in real life who had only known me through YouTube prior was when I was at about 1,500 subscribers. But it's happening more and more often, even outside of the meetups. Well, welfare for corporate, right? Corporations like profit sharing, good pensions, parental leave. I mean, that's not welfare by corporations. That's fringe benefits that companies offer because they feel like they can get better talent that way. Um, Let the market compete. Like the thing is that what would you think about it, honestly? What would you rather take? Would you rather have $100,000 a year job that has a pension and parental leave, or would you rather have a $200,000 a year job without it? Most Americans, at least, would pick the latter. They would pick less benefits but more pay. And it's about up to employees to make that decision. It's like the whole idea of Europeans going on vacation more than Americans. Yeah, Europeans get 6 weeks of paid vacation versus an average of maybe 2 to 3 for Americans. But the thing is that their salaries are way lower than the extra paid time off implies. So let's just say you get 6 weeks of paid vacation, therefore you should get paid maybe 15% less than an American who gets only 2 weeks of vacation. The salary gap is much wider than that. So you can create as much vacation time as you want theoretically if you're willing to take more time off unpaid and have a lower salary. You can kind of customize it and build it yourself in that way. But yeah, if you're an employer and want to offer that, and you think you get better employees doing that than having higher salaries, go and try it. It could work, actually. It might be an opportunity. Let's see. What dating advice would you give to a UCLA student looking to a serious girlfriend despite the dominance of hookup culture? Um, I mean, you have to meet people during the day. You're on a college campus, it's a little easier than other times in life. But like there are plenty of more study focused first people who want more serious relationships. It also could be like if you are somebody of a religious persuasion, maybe the student group related to that. But I think it's just meeting people in the daytime and not being afraid to talk to strangers. Um, don't do it too much though. You got to be selective and just start off socially and get to know this. Is even somebody you'd want to hang out with before asking them out on a date. If it's a chance that you'll run into them on a regular basis, like if they're like a classmate or something. Whereas if it's somebody you never see again, then you might have to have a different approach. But yeah, um, in general, just again, meeting people in daytime or student organizations or clubs or things like that that don't revolve around alcohol or sports, like intramural club level. Like I have friends who've met their future wives through both being like on the men's and women's teams of various sports in college. So that can work too. Um, and generally people who are busy, like with like athlete schedule or taking a harder kind of class load, then usually don't have the bandwidth or the interest in the party lifestyle. Um, but again, you're also only in college, so don't worry about it. You've got plenty of time. I wouldn't even be worrying about finding a future wife until you graduate because you don't know where you're going to live, and there's a lot of other things too much up in the air um, at that point in your life. Um, let's see. Um, all right, it seems like you guys are more chatting with each other, so I gotta see if thoughts on the Trump accounts. Are you talking about like the Trump accounts for kids that they give them $1,000 and you invested it and it compounds over time? I mean, it's just kind of like it's an indirect tax rebate for families essentially. It's just kind of like a bonus child credit is really what I think of it. I mean, I think it's a better use of tax dollars than a lot of other policies, but in general, I would and I think that the option of giving like a 401k type plan though for kids to use to help buy their first house or pay for college or start a first business is a good idea. Um, like in general, I think it's probably one of the better things to come out of the Big Beautiful Bill Act. Uh, let's see. Um, you're the one the tax question. That the one all caps. I mean, it just seems like you're more shouting at me than asking a question. That's why I didn't really want to read it. Um, Passport Bros or Prole Drift. Um, I think it can be. Uh, I mean, so that probably would be a whole nother topic. I think for on actual Valentine's Day, I'm going to release one of my members only videos. And one of them is either going to be the debunking the doomer, the passport bros, or the looks maxing one. And you'll have a poll that'll come out on the channel for your chance to vote on that. But I mean, after I release one of those, I'm going to be entirely done with economics and dating intersection related videos. I kind of made this one as like the definitive end game for this because I don't really want to be a thought leader in this category. Um, but what advice do you have for meeting family oriented men with good values? Um, Found that church groups, most guys that are married straight out of college. I mean, are you guys all living in like the Midwest or like the rural South? Like, I don't know. There's plenty like of most of my peers didn't get married men wise until they were at least 29, 30 years old. I mean, I had some friends who got married shortly out of college. Like my youngest friend to get married was about 24. Um, but yeah, maybe you just need to move to places that have higher educated populations that are less likely to get married right out of school. Um, and in your case, um, I that's I'd be really surprised, honestly, by that. Next question really is okay. What's it called? How old am I? I mean, I told you I'm in my mid to late 30s. Let's see. I'm in my early 20s real estate license. Nobody my age is buying. Well, yeah, I mean, buying a house is expensive. Like the average home buyer is like late 30s, early 40s. So if you're trying to build a practice based on people buying your own age as a real estate practice, that's not very um, smart. So yeah, I mean, you need to market to older people. You can either partner with an older agent as a team if they don't think they trust you because of your age, or you just need to go out to events like to meet older people, like join a pickleball club to get clients. That might be a way. Um, so yeah, let's see. What cities have a mix of career opportunities for commercial real estate and finance? finance in general, and people are open to dating seriously. I think it's more well-to-do suburbs of major metropolitan areas. So probably like I think like probably the Dallas Metroplex is an example of something that would fit that. Orange County, California. Um, I would say like maybe like Palm Beach County in Florida, or would be something, or Broward County in Florida, Tampa area. I think Atlanta. Atlanta is the highest paid jobs relative to cost of living anywhere. Um, yeah, it's generally cities in the South or the West um, that have like a lot of growth, but also relatively high education rates. Yeah, it's probably also Columbus, Ohio, in the Midwest, Chicago, and a lot of places. I mean, I think, but in general, like if you're trying to prioritize real estate development, it'd probably be the South or the West where there's still room to build things. Like in cities that are older and more established and more space constrained, you're probably going to um, have a little bit of a harder time. Um, let's see. I'm not gonna get into my specific thoughts on my bullish or bearish outlook on silver or gold because I don't talk about specific investments, as you guys know on this channel. If you want help with your specific investments, just schedule like a consultation with me to chat directly. I don't know anything about the Trump Board of Peace. It seems like a lot of random countries, and surprisingly, a lot of our more mainstream allies haven't really joined it. I don't think it has an impact on the market whatsoever, the Board of Peace. Um, let's see. Um, do you think that a recession is coming? Yeah, I think there's going to be a recession. I thought it would have already happened by now, to be honest, but it's likely to be like an 01, 2000, 2001 type recession where it's kind of moderate for overall economy, but it's going to have a disproportionate impact on asset markets, is my guess. Like, I don't think you're going to see like a ton of like job losses in the next down cycle. I don't think you're going to see a lot of disproportionate mainstream pain. If you're going to see a lot of job loss, it's going to be more due to AI disruption than a weak economy. Um, but what would you do if you felt your location had no growth potential for you, but don't want to leave your family and friends behind? Tough it out or try to make your own opportunity. I mean, it depends where you live. Like I'm fortunate I live in a place that has enough economic opportunity and I grew up in a city that has a lot of economic opportunity. So, like if you live in a major metropolitan area in the US that's not completely stagnant, and you have a good community locally, it probably makes sense to stay where you're growing up and grow up just for networking reasons and to be able to plant your flag. But if you live in a place that's completely dead, um, you might need to go off to some place where you can plant your flag and start a new family there. And if you are successful, you can maybe encourage if your family, if you like your, if you have siblings, for example, or family members in your own generation who are as motivated to improve themselves as you are, to have them be the like the olive branch to extend to them to bring them to whatever city you go to and you just visit your parents. Preferably try to pick a place that has direct flight access if it's that far. So, or it's in the same time zone or something at least. But again, I don't really know what specific city you're in, so I can't really comment on whether that's necessary or not. Um, yeah, let's see if I've got any more questions here. Do you have any fears of your face and voice being on YouTube, seeing AI deepfakes are getting better and better? That's a good question. Um, I've thought about it. I mean, I've had friends make deepfakes of my voice as pranks already. So like I don't really worry about it too much at this point because what am I gonna do about it? Like, I could scrub the whole internet and shut down my channel, but I don't really want to do that. So I can't. I mean, if it happens, I guess so be it. But like, I'll just let me know if it does so I can get the impersonator shut down pretty quickly. I had a problem with somebody creating a fake X account trying to sell people scams under my name, and I think I got that dealt with. But yeah, if anybody's making weird deep fakes of me, let me know. Um, is good Are good grades in college important for future employment? I don't mean D's in all classes, but is getting all A's imperative? Um, I think it depends on where you went to school and what you're studying. Like for very intense STEM majors, I don't think it matters at all what your grades are. For most other majors, I think like if you have a 3.5 and above, I think it's basically a proof that you're smart and you are a diligent student. If you're trying to get into like elite graduate school or law school or something like that, then the GPA is going to matter. And there are certain firms who will only interview people with like a minimum of a 3.8 or a 3.9. And if they're in the industries that you want to work in, then you might have to care more. But that's a very minority position. I think most employers care that you're like reasonably intelligent. You're enough to get like the lower tiers of the cum laude. You're probably fine. I think the marginal effort to go for a perfect GPA is not worth it. Am I associated with the Freemasons? No, I'm not. Um, let's see. What do you agree that the idea of the British American Empire is coming to an end and the future is a multipolar world? Well, we already are in a multipolar world, and the British Empire died in 1945. Maybe not officially until maybe 1997, but it's basically stopped being a major political force after at least the Suez crisis. I think America is more in the growing pains stage. Like if I had to map a historical analog, America is like at the point of like the Grocki brothers or Sulla. We're not at the 80, 40, 76, not even close. I think what's going to likely happen is the US is going to change its form of government and revitalize its strength once that happens. Um, but it might be a little bit turbulent. But I think the next great power will be like the United States, but kind of reformed in a different way. And I'm not really sure what that way necessarily is. Um, but let's see. I won't be able to make the Dallas on the 30th. Any chance you could just say no? I've already organized, bought my flights. I will have the private dinner the night before, possibly on the 29th, but that's when I'm going to be in Dallas is the 29th and the 30th. Um, that's not changing. I've already or that's already locked in. All the events that I've announced are locked in already. I can't change the dates. Um, do you see the US dollar remaining the global reserve currency for the next 10 years? Yeah, the only way it doesn't is if somehow the RMB became fully gold backed, which I don't think is very likely to happen. What are your thoughts on making friends? I've struggled my whole life figuring out how to build deeper friendship with guys. Um, I mean, it's like I feel like society makes a mistake of assuming that like if you that you're supposed to be friends with the people through high school and maybe college your entire life. And some people who were more socially popular growing up or like did succeed at that generally stay in their little bubble with all the people that they met earlier in life. But a lot of us were not fortunate in that situation. I've had my social circle of friends turn over multiple times due to moving or other life things that happen. But like once I finally like stayed put in the city where I'm going to live and decided to like make an effort to re-engage with the communities when I started to improve my friends. And the nice part about friendship in adulthood is that you can base it on genuine connections and genuine value environments and not just based on proximity. Like most friendships of youth are based more on proximity and you happening to be in the same place or doing the same thing. So think of it as an opportunity. And again, I would just start if you're looking to make friends, go to events that are related to your affiliations and interests. Like I know people who've made new friends through my meetups, for example, and I've met new friends through my meetups. And I think you can do it in other similar types of events. So yeah, I think there's a lot of it's not a time to give up, but I would focus on making new friends before dating, especially if you're under 30 years old. And then once you have developed the basic social skills to maintain friendships, then you can try to extend it to romantic relationships. Um, let's see. What's your typical size of your events? It really depends on the city. Like when we got started with the events last year, they were fairly small, but now they're usually 30 to 50 people approximately, depending on what city I've been. The biggest we've ever had was 75. And they're continuing to grow. Like every time I go to a different city or I come back to one and do an event, the size of the events have increased. So, yeah. Do I go to church? Yeah, I actually just was at mass before I did this live stream. So, yeah, I do. Let's see. But what was I going to say? What college majors, certifications, and license do you recommend for adults age 30 plus looking for career change? I mean, again, it's got to be something you're legitimately interested in that lines up with your skill set. I can't give you that answer on a live stream. Um, so the US will no longer be the US. Well, it'll be the United States of America, but will it be a democratic republic still? That's the bigger question. Um, let's see. What do you think be done on a societal level to combat all these problems in dating and marriage that you addressed in this stream? Well, I think a few things. One, men should like on the men's side, they should make a priority to be more leaders in their day to day lives and have an actual plan for their life and a vision that their future wife can sign up for and be proud to sign up for. And just putting in more effort. And on the women's side, is to just be more selective of who you choose to date and value certain categories like the personality traits that lead to long-term success both in the financial world and in terms of healthy quality of relationships and genuine emotional connections and not focus on superficial things that are pushed by social media. I think that men need to improve their willingness to take initiative and action, and women need to improve their discernment. Um, that's really what would be the answers to that. Um, and I think young people in general, need to just get out more. It seems like a lot of you guys are living relatively atomized lives, and just I think that just generally need to just improve communities. Um, let's see. What are your thoughts on the 1 billion Ripple G Treasury deal? I don't know enough about it to have very strong comments, especially something I would talk about on a live stream. Um, but I'm going to probably wrap this up at the 2:45 mark. So I will do, because I'm starting to lose my voice and I think the questions are slowing down. So I've got 6 more minutes that I'll take questions before I wrap things up. It's a nice sunny day here in Southern California, so I want to spend some time outside before it gets dark. Um, let's see if there's any other. questions. Will artificial intelligence make countries less dependent on immigration for labor? Yes, it will. And I think artificial intelligence is going to change the politics of immigration to the point where people are not going to want to bring in immigrants because jobs will become more scarce because of AI, and you won't need, and robots and AI will be the new source of cheap labor, and it'll be a lot less politically and socially destabilizing form of cheap labor. So yeah, um, I think it will make people less, it'll make countries less dependent on immigration, and it will make the politics of open borders or more loose immigration very toxic in most countries. Yeah. Um, let's see. If you were from a wealthy family, how would you approach dating? I don't think I would have changed it the way I did, honestly, in my actual life. Um, Again, you generally want to date people who are relatable to you, and you just have to be, if you're from a wealthy family, don't flash wealth. Live like you're somebody who makes $200,000 a year. Like enough that you're like a respectable, high earning person, but not enough that people would want to marry you for money. So that's how I, like, if I was a rich person, I would just portray myself, like my public view is like a guy making about 200K. Um, that's the only difference. Um, like if you're, like, do you recommend putting your wealth in an offshore irrevocable trust? I mean, that's depending on your estate planning needs. I can't really answer that here. Um, what's the purpose of the ruling class to downgrade the quality of living for middle class and below? I don't think it's intentional that the ruling class wants to intentionally downgrade the quality of living for the middle class. I think it's just um, a side effect of more um, self-serving policies. Am I planning to visit China? No, I am not. Uh, I thought it, I mean, I might do an Asia tour to certain cities out in that part of the world if there's demand, but so far there's a lack of it. But yeah, I'm not, I've already been out to most of, I've already been to East Asia multiple times, and it's not really on my bucket list at the moment. Um, I don't think that this time is that similar to the Gilded Age, honestly. I think the 2000s and the 2010s pre-pandemic were more similar to the Gilded Age than today. Uh, um, so yeah, let's see. Do you prefer Penn or Wilson for tennis balls? I don't really notice the difference, to be quite honest. I so I can't really say. Um, I'm not going to comment about my thoughts on crypto. Um, yeah, I think I'm gonna. Um, I think I'm gonna wrap up the live stream here, everybody. Thank you guys for watching. The next one will be the 100K special when I get back from Australia. And thank you guys all for supporting the channel. Hopefully, you've got learned something about this, and hopefully, this kind of gives you some perspective of the real forces driving the issues with the dating market. And it's not just like what manosphere or feminist influencers tell you that it's all just one gender's fault or the other, and it's a really a multivariate problem that we all need to kind of address together. And yeah, I also look forward to seeing you guys on the tour as we keep going. And I've got a lot of good content in store for you for this channel for 2026 and beyond. Thank you guys for watching and have a great evening. And also for the Super Bowl pick, I don't really watch the NFL. It's probably my least favorite of the professional sports, but if I had to guess, it'd probably be the Seahawks. Have a good night.